And greetings there, internet people. I want to talk today about conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories. This has been a really polarizing topic in probably every community over the past couple of years. It certainly has in mine. Um, so I want to dive into this with just a little bit of a different perspective that I don't hear articulated often, and want to invite you to join the conversation. Let me know what you think. So when we think about a conspiracy theorist, starting with the stereotype, there's always something illuminating in a stereotype, right? So we think about a person who is extremely gullible, easily deluded. I was talking with a friend recently about high openness, high Neptune energy in a personality, and how that can indicate just being willing to believe just about anything, high openness and gullibility, mixed with low end education or access to information, or extremely low trust in any authoritative sources. That can certainly lead to some delusions. And so there's some truth in this stereotype there for sure. um, but that stereotype is also being used as a red herring, I think, to shut down our critical thinking and creative, imaginative thinking on a lot of topics. When we just use that caricature to think about conspiracies, and that's what we label a conspiracy. I want to propose the counter idea that conspiratorial thinking is actually a very rational, reasonable, and intuitive and sensible thing to do if we do it wisely. Um, when we think about a conspiracy, when I think of a conspiracy, I just think about multiple forces conspiring together toward some end. That doesn't necessarily have to be a conscious end. It just means that there are forces, hidden forces that are hidden from our conscious view, that are conspiring. And there are conspiracies happening all around us all the time. Of course, many of them are known and discovered by science. Science has been able to label and tell us why various things happen, what forces, unseen forces, are actually conspiring to make things happen. So we don't think of these as conspiracy theories, right? But they are indeed forces that are conspiring um, to make certain things happen. And as our scientific, rational knowledge has grown, we've been able to name and label more and more of those things. But that doesn't mean that we have identified every single force in the universe that there is, and how it interacts with every other force. Like that would be arrogant to assume that we've figured that out. Um, Anyone who's done personal growth work, introspection, looking at themselves, knows that your unconscious mind is running conspiracies all the time. And as you get more and more conscious, you can learn to be, more directive and more aware, and just increase your capacity for understanding and controlling those tendencies. But we have all kinds of unconscious forces operating in us all the time, right? I mean, many are just the basic obvious ones, like the instinctual, the desire to propagate our genes and to procreate. We have these genetic impulses that are driving our actions or influencing our actions. We have impulses for survival. We have impulses for security. We have impulses for social status, which, as social beings, that's a big part of our security. We're social animals. We need social status. That's not just about ego, pride, or whatever. Social status is important to our survival as well. So we have all of these genetic proclivities and psychological proclivities, and add in our wounding patterns. And we know, anyone who's done personal growth work knows, that wounding patterns have a kind of a self-perpetuating energy to them. There's a force in the unconscious that's driving behavior, and identifying it is the first step. But just because we can consciously identify it one time, that doesn't mean, okay, it's completely vanished. It's like, no, there's these forces, these unconscious forces that sometimes we have to work for years to transform, or sometimes we just have to learn to live with and learn how to master and understand that we have a lot of unconscious forces happening within us. When you say you're doing something, someone asks you, why are you doing this? Um, if you if you're honest, you won't be 100% certain. I mean, it's good to have strong intention and be clear, like what intention you're bringing forth. But like the humble truth of the matter is, like, there are so many factors influencing a choice, and some of them you're not going to realize until after the fact. You're going to look back and be like, yeah, I said I was doing this thing because of X, but I really see that it was actually influenced by Y. Like I was running this secret plot in my unconscious. This is the what I said and what I believed. I said I was doing this thing because it was the right thing to do, or I took this job because it was the right thing to do for my family, or whatever, because I really believed in the mission. Or and then you look back and go, I actually see that there was a huge motivation just for gaining others' approval in that situation. And I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't being honest with myself in the moment because I couldn't even see it, but it was there. Right. So that's an internal conspiracy. And so the path of self awareness and awakening is one of basically having that inquisitive mind, knowing that we're running conspiracies, different aspects of our unconscious are running these all of the time. And it's a practice of going within to learn to identify those. And we have to be curious, and we can't be too arrogant and assume that we always know exactly all of the forces that are in play. So we have to get quiet and listen and have that open mind to knowing, like, what, like when I take this action, make this choice, like what is it serving? And what am I being influenced by? Pretty important questions that every like seeker, spiritual seeker, has been asking for years, right? So extending this thinking outward into the collective, there are many unconscious forces that are in the collective psyche, and what you believe about what their origins are or where they come from, I mean, that's open, that's up to you, metaphysically. But there are forces that are operating in the collective. um, when politicians sign something into law, or when powerful people behind corporate desks make decisions, there's what they say they're doing and what they believe they're doing, and then there's also the layer of, and what else is it serving? Because there are unconscious forces at play that are working toward various ends. So people that are conspiracy theorists are usually really high. I think this is my guess. I think a lot of conspiracy theorists are high in instinctual intelligence, not always super high in cognitive intelligence, sometimes high in cognitive intelligence, but high in instinctual intelligence, to the point where you can just sense that like something is off here, something is wrong. You can sense that there's some sort of energetic happening in the collective that the politicians and the people in power are not admitting to. So there's people with instinctual intelligence that feel like they're being gaslit because there's various phenomenon that are happening in society that are not being formally addressed. So just to name a few, like there's one that we could look at the trend of dehumanization, how we're getting further and further away from our connected to our bodies, connected to the land, connected to our communities. So there's a dehumanization trend that we could observe as a conspiracy. It's various forces of our modern society and our way of thinking, way of being collectively, that are conspiring toward a dehumanization. And another one we could talk about that the left focuses on a lot is patriarchy, right? And there are cynical people on the right who will just say, that's just a big conspiracy theory. But it's a observable, true fact that you can look at the forces that are conspiring and have conspired for millennia to elevate men, give men more power, and to elevate masculine values over feminine values. So that's another example of a conspiracy that is taking place. Market class division. We have a system set up where there are various forces that conspire to create stratification of society, where we have various social classes. That's a conspiracy that the left is also focused on a lot. One that the right is more focused on is a increasing an increasing element of control based on the ever expanding need and capacity for security, right? So as we have this insatiable appetite for security and risk harm avoidance. And so as our technology and ability grows to prevent that risk, to minimize those risks, then there's more and more control that's coming in. So that's another observable conspiracy that is it's more the right that's focusing on that. So the mistake where everyone goes wrong is taking all these things literally and imagining, instead of identifying and seeing that there's these unseen forces at play that are mostly unconscious, is that people imagine that there are people behind the scenes doing smoky backroom deals, intentionally planning all these things. Sometimes those kind of conspiracies do happen. Like, we know that those kinds of conspiracies can take place. But the vast majority of the conspiracies that people intuitively sense into are happening in an unconscious, even kind of metaphoric and symbolic level, but it's real and people feel it happening in the collective. When you don't have the language to talk about it in that way, then all you can do is imagine it's like some literal conspiracy going on. And when you hear about one, it validates that instinctual feeling. Like, there's ones that I think the culture war, the left and right, is divided based on these different instincts that people have. On both sides, there's instincts that are correct about, like, something is off here. There's these forces that are conspiring in a way that is not good. And the culture war seems to be divided a lot by, like, the different instincts that people have about, like, where they're most intuitively sensitive. But when you don't have the language for that and you can't validate that, and you're basically telling people, like, no, you're wrong, your intuition is wrong, well, then you have to make up a story. You have to have a literal thing that is real. So when someone does come along and make up a story that's like, it feels really good to believe it because it validates an internal sensibility that's correct. So, like, there's been a lot of criticism in, like, the spiritual community around the harmful conspiracy theories that are out there, especially ones that are associated on the right. And they make a lot of valid points, but the more interesting conversation to me is, like, what's the deeper psychic motivation for that conspiracy theory? Like, why is it attractive to people in the psyche? There's something about it. There's an instinct that it's tapping into, and we should be looking at what is that? Like, what are people sensing? What conspiracies are people sensing in the collective and being sensitive to? I mean, the ultimate conspiracy theory of the last age, at least, was the God and the devil, is like the simplest way to break it down. And it's a conspiracy theory that we have, benevolent and malevolent forces, opposing forces that are conspiring to their ends in various ways. And that's what we have playing out on Earth. It's like this spiritual battle between light and dark. And maybe that myth serves. Maybe it doesn't serve everyone, but I see how it can be a useful tool just to break it down in a simplistic kind of way. And again, if you've done any introspective meditative work, most people who've done this kind of work will identify with, like, yeah, there's definitely some forces that are not me that are working through me, or maybe even want to use me as an instrument for their ends. Like this is a force that is bigger than me. And so there's a lot of these forces, but I mean, love is one of these forces. Like if you've really been in that place of just full heart activation, love state, you feel like this is something bigger than me. Like I'm part of a love conspiracy right now. There's love is conspiring to use me to its end right now. There's that feeling. Um, and there's that feeling I get on the reverse with like resentment. Um, Sometimes there's just this energy of resentment that can come in that feels like this is an energy that it's a force that's beyond me. It's bigger than me. And it's using me for its ends if I let it. It's conspiring, right? So the deflection of like don't think about conspiracies because it's just deluded people and people that are making up these ideas. It goes back to the like that's really being used as a red herring right now to shut down our intuition about these forces that are conspiring in the collective. And so I think it's helpful as long as we're wise and not too literal, to think with a conspiratorial mindset and to also fuse in a rational, grounded perspective as well. But to keep an open mind, the same way we do in our meditation practice when we're going within and and looking to grow. So thanks for tuning in, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Peace out.